Okay, let's talk about fonts and whether it matters which font you use in your presentation, and also how big should the text be. Remember, you want the slides to reinforce what you're saying. The slides are not your speech, they're just reinforcing what you're saying, so they need to be nice and simple and elegant. So let's have a look at some of the pitfalls and then some of the solutions that I think work best. So first of all, does the font that you use, does it really matter to your presentation? Will it affect your speech? Will people think badly of you if you use the wrong font? Well, it may do. It actually may do, because it does matter which font you use. You wouldn't use this font, for example. It's a fun font and it's got its uses, but not in a presentation. Again, this is called Joker or something like that, and it's kind of a fun font and it's right in the right place. It's probably quite good, but again, you wouldn't use it in a presentation. So I'll show you some of the font crimes, if you like, that people make. This is from a recent talk that I watched online, and I grabbed a screenshot. And this is okay, this slide. I mean, it's not beautifully laid out. The font at the top is fine. It's Calibri or something like that. But the word relapse is in some kind of weird sort of Jurassic Park typeface, which doesn't look right in a medical presentation. It looks a bit odd. Here someone is trying to give a quotation, which is fine. Quotes are often done in italics with inverted commas, and this is fine. But they've used such a fancy font with all these are called swashes, the F, with its big sweeping curves. In a novel this might look okay, but on a slide it looks weird, and then something strange has happened. They've changed the spacing of their typeface at the bottom, the Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. The spacing has gone a bit weird, and you wouldn't want to show that to an audience. It just doesn't look very professional. This is probably the worst typeface to use in any serious presentation. If you're talking to under fives, then of course you could get away with Comic Sans, but this is a real medical presentation. Now look at this. This is Comic Sans used for a clinical lecture to adults, not to children, to adults. It's bad because, I mean, the face is quite large, but they've justified it on the right. So you've got a completely straight line down the right side, which makes it quite hard to read. They've used too many words, they've underlined, they have some bold in there. There's big spaces. If you look at the second bullet point, however, big space, thrombocytopenia, big space does, big space. Because they've right justified it, it's stretched the spacing out. So it looks really messy, unappealing, hard to read. And if you're in the room, you just won't bother reading that. Although you shouldn't really be reading it anyway, you should be listening to the speaker. But nonetheless, this is a very overcrowded slide with a very bad font. So I would never ever use Comic Sans if you're speaking to adults. If it's scientific, if it's medical, or any lecture or presentation to an adult audience, don't use this typeface. And have a look at bancomicsans.com. There's lots of discussion about Comic Sans there. Now this is a grown-up font, and I think it's Book Antigua or Palatino. And this is fine for a novel, it's fine for a magazine or something written, done in a Word document, but it's not good on a slide or on a poster or anything big, because it's a fancy kind of serif font designed to be printed in a small size, not big. It's meant to be small, and that's why the serifs are there. So stick to simple fonts, no embellishments, no swashes, nothing weird and wonderful, and go for something fairly elegant like this. This is Helvetica, which looks like Arial, and this is how I would lay out a slide. My heading is in blue, it's not underlined, everything is bold there, it's a large font. Whichever font you use in your presentation, keep the same font, or if you use two fonts, keep the same two fonts through your whole presentation. Don't keep switching, because if you switch fonts during a talk, it's confusing for the audience. It's like changing typeface when you turn over the page of a novel. It changes to a different face. You would find it frustrating. Well, similarly in a talk. Don't overcrowd your slides. If there's a lot of information, spread it over multiple slides. Don't try and cram it all into one slide. You're not trying to present a Word document. So there are two types of fonts basically. There are those with serifs, the little things that I put circles around there, the little embellishments to the letters, which are designed to make text readable in a book or a newspaper or a magazine when it's printed at small size. It makes it very easy to read. They're not designed for the screen, they're not designed for posters, they're much harder to read. The top line, which says avoid serif fonts, is written in a serif font. It's harder to read. Don't use these unusual swash type fonts that I've said with the big curvy lines, and it's very elegant, but it's not good for a presentation. So stick to the standard typefaces. Those with serifs are Times New Roman, which is obviously from the Times newspaper, which is what made it famous. Great at small print size. Palatino, again, it's used in novels and many other places. Again, small print size. Garamond, Georgia. Those are not your presentation fonts. The ones on the right are the presentation fonts. Those lacking serifs. Helvetica, Arial, Calibri, Gill Sans, something like that. Keep the text large. I've used brown here for some reason in my heading, just to differentiate it from the body text. Big font. Do you need bullet points? I don't think you do. Lots of people use them. They come with all the templates in PowerPoint and in Keynote, and bullet points are everywhere, but I'm not really sure what they're for. I don't think they add anything. In fact, I think they make them less good. I like no bullets. Whether you use bullets or not, keep it consistent throughout your whole talk. Don't use bullets for some slides and then no bullets and then bullets again. Don't overcrowd, and as I said, you're not presenting a Word document. Colour is good to break up text. Colour is good for emphasis. You might want to make a word in the colour red to make it stand out. But if you use too many colours, it then becomes very confusing, as on this slide. Stick to black for your body text, or grey, or blue is fine, but keep it consistent. Don't underline your text. It looks ugly. It's like the old typewriter days from years ago, because they had no bold on the typewriter, so they underlined to emphasize something. But nowadays we have bold, we have other ways of emphasizing. Use either a bold font next to a non-bold, so the word you use is not bold and the word bold is in bold. It makes it stand out. I could have made the word bold red and that would have made it stand out, or blue, just a different color. That would have made it stand out. Don't underline. So simple text slides could be like the following slides. These are slides that I've used for my talks. They are simple, but they get the message across. This is how much text I would put on a slide, maybe one more line. The font size is nice and large. You don't have to screw your eyes up. It's easy to read. There are no bullet points. I've kept brown for my title and a dark grey for the body text. And I have a reference at the bottom there. Here I've used a slightly different typeface, but similar, but it is a different typeface. Blue for my title, and again the dark grey for the body text. I have 4 lines. I could have had 5 lines, or maybe 6 lines. I could also add a graphic to the white space on the right, or just leave the white space. It's nice to have some space to breathe on your slide. You don't want to use every single bit of the white space on a slide. Here's another example again. Blue for my heading and the same size font. Nice and easy to read. Yeah, that's kind of what I use. So just to recap, keep it simple. Use 1 or 2 fonts only in a slide deck. Don't add 4, 5, 6, it becomes confusing. Don't make your text small, keep it nice and big like this slide. Don't overcrowd your slide, because then you lose the message and you're making the audience work far too hard. Simplicity really does work best. Simple and elegant.